Welcome back to another podcast episode where we help aspiring developers get jobs and junior developers grow. Today, we are going to be reviewing 1150 Academy. And like usual, I brought on 3 real graduates to give their transparent reviews. We're going to dig into them, and hopefully this can give you a better idea whether this coding bootcamp is going to be right for you. So like usual, we'll go ahead and start with our intros. Chris, if you would let us know what program you went through. If you found a job, you're currently looking for a job, and what industry you came from.
So I went through the web development program with 1150. Basically, in terms of the industry, I came before 1150. I've worked in various industries. I've worked in sales. I've worked in the pool industry. I've worked for tech industry as well, but it's more so hardware. I worked as a technician for AT&T. And then I forgot you did ask one more thing as well.
Yeah, did you find a job yet, or are you still looking?
Yes, I am. I actually just started. I just completed my online portfolio, so I was really adamant about completing that first before I actually started the application process to kind of put my best foot forward. So I am just now starting. I haven't found a job just yet since I graduated just about a month ago. But yeah.
Okay, fair enough. Yeah, that's recent. That's really recent. Okay, cool. Well, thank you. Sally, how about you?
Yeah, I graduated from the web development program at 1150. I was in marketing. I did find a job post-graduation, but it is not in web development. It is still a marketing role. So.
Gotcha. Did you go to the coding bootcamp to transition to professional web development?
That's a complicated question to answer. Yes and no. That would have been nice, but I was really looking for a way to break out of my current role. I was a writer. I was a content writer and worked in content marketing, and I just was done writing, and I couldn't seem to get into another role outside of writing. So if it didn't lead necessarily to web development, I was hoping that the skill set that I gained would at least allow me to transition into something different. So.
Interesting. Okay. Yeah, there are definitely people, very few, but definitely people that sign up to Coding Bootcamp just to apply their tech skills, just to apply their coding skills. When did you graduate?
I graduated about a year ago, actually.
And how long did it take you to find that new position?
I was hunting while I was I quit my job with no backup. I had limited savings, and I was just I can't be a writer anymore. I've got to find a way out of this. So I had to job hunt while I was going through the boot camp, and I was hired. I got an offer with about 2 weeks to go before graduation. So I was actually got a job while I was still enrolled and completing the course.
Okay. Interesting. All right. Thank you. How about you, Keisha?
So the industry I'm coming from is actually journalism and also marketing, graphic design, just kind of the whole digital content creation as well, space, multimedia journalism. I will actually be finishing up December 10th. Our class graduates on the 3rd. So we're this newest cohort of graduates coming out of 1150. Do not have a job yet, but also like Sally, I have been looking for a job and have just recently, like Chris, finished my portfolio, the revamped version of it. Obviously, that's one of the projects that we have in the course. But, once you get done with that and then you kind of start to feel your skill set a little bit and, have more autonomy with the frameworks and stuff like that. You always want to go back and revisit it. So I've just gotten done that portion. And yeah, I would say it's transitory for me. So I have been interested in coding and web development and computer programming for years now. I actually tried to do the self-taught route last year with Zero to Mastery when COVID first hit. In March, they actually gave away, I think, like a year of their classes, or like 6 to 8 months or something. It was something like that. They had gave those away for free, and I had enrolled in that. And that program was awesome. It's just that it was all pre-recorded and there was no like interaction or anything. And for me, especially with learning a new concept, because these are really languages, you know what I mean? And you kind of need that immersion, and you kind of need somebody speaking it back to you. At least I do anyway. Being a linguistic person, I just realized that I wasn't going to be as successful doing only that route, or only starting off that route. So I chose to, I got the opportunity again this year to do the 1150 Academy and actually, sit with them. And though it was virtual, it still was a full class of people. And, we interacted with each other 9 to 5 every day, Monday through Friday. But what I have found is that I am thinking that I'm more interested, even though I'm glad I have the capacity of the front end and back end development. I see that my niche is more technical writing. Which is really, really underserved in the tech community as well. So being able to, meld my skill set of journalism, editing, all of those good things, and then put that on with the usability of being able to use these frameworks as a, endpoint consumer, but also as a person that would want to help communicate better and articulate better how to use these, in more plain speak, if you will, for people trying to kind of get in, looking to get into tech, but are kind of put off by the tech language, or, the coldness of the conversation a lot of the time.
Okay. Is this checking? You had a slightly unique background. I remember talking to you about that, or at least digging into your LinkedIn profile. Okay. Interesting. You might have said this. When did you graduate? And when did you graduate?
Well, we'll be graduating in a week. So,
oh my God.
We're the most recent. At the time of this recording, we are the graduating class. That's upcoming.
Yeah, I remember this. I definitely remember this. Okay, so, all right, interesting. So we basically have two people that aren't like going strictly into web development right away. You enjoyed technical writing. Geisha, I feel like I just have a foggy brain today. Are you aiming for kind of like a web development position that like really focuses on technical writing, or are you still kind of trying to figure out whether you want to focus on technical writing or get a coding position?
So I know that that's where I'm passionate at. That's kind of where I'm drawn energetically with knowing what I know now, like having done it, and having gotten the training formally. But I'm also open. I know for certain, though, I don't want to do back end development. But if it's, anything front end, or if it's anything, that kind of, again, pulls from what I've already built, as a graphic designer, freelancer, editor, publisher, you know what I mean? Like all of those things I've already kind of tapped into. I would love to, see those translated into the tech field. But I feel like that would best be done right now as a technical writer, and kind of give me that, that freedom of mobility in terms of the actual field.
Got it. Okay. Well, thanks for clarifying. I appreciate that. All right, let's dive into it. Like I said, we're going to talk over each other, probably like the first 10 minutes, we get comfortable with it. But why did you choose 1150?
I guess I'll kind of go first, or unless you guys want to go first, Sally?
No, go ahead. You're fine.
So it was kind of a unique situation for me. I'm originally from Texas. Before moving to Indianapolis, we didn't actually plan on moving to Indianapolis. We wanted to stay in Texas, but my girlfriend, we found out that we were expecting, so we wanted to be closer to family, and we have family here in Indianapolis, so we decided to move here, get a little bit more help for the little one. And then at that point in time, just kind of backtrack a little bit, prior to moving, I already took the Udacity NATA degree, and this was, I would say this was maybe 2 years ago. So I've been kind of interested about coding for a long time by then. And it's like, I've self-taught, I've taught myself basic HTML, CSS, JavaScript, and all the other things come along with it. But I felt like it wasn't enough for me. It was really hard for me to keep myself going, because I really didn't know anyone in the field. All of my friends are in marketing, in finance, and basically in business. So it was hard to reach out to someone, especially when you're just trying to figure out if this is the right thing for you. So when we moved to 1150, I was kind of in the market. I was kind of looking at coding boot camps. So, I figured, hey, if I'm going to do this, I have to do this 110%. I just gotta, 110%. I gotta make sure to do this the right way, get all the right fundamentals. If there was anything I missed, but when I was teaching myself how to code, which there was a lot, 1150 kind of helped put all those together in a bundle, which basically just helped me understand a lot more in terms of the world of web development and creating web apps and whatnot. So 1150 just happened to be here when we moved. They were offering the CARES Act at that time, so I was able to actually get into bootcamp for free, which was actually a very big help. But without me knowing, I applied. I didn't know that until I was basically within the application process. And that was kind of like a good surprise because I was willing to take some money off the savings to kind of pursue my passion. And and I guess it just kind of worked out. And now here I am.
Okay. Really cool. All right. So kind of just in the local area.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Interesting. So
yep. And I've looked at other boot camps as well. But it was, I honestly thought that I wanted to do something locally, but with COVID, of course, everything was virtual. So that kind of expanded what boot camps I was looking for. But with the CARES Act, it was kind of almost a no-brainer. Yeah.
Okay. Sounds good. How about you two? Why 1150?
You go ahead, Sally.
I had actually worked for a tech company in Indianapolis. And they had hired, I was part of the interview process when we were looking for a web developer for the marketing team. And I actually interviewed an 1150 graduate. And so that's how I knew about 1150. We actually ended up hiring him, and he was a fantastic developer. So I honestly didn't explore any other options. I just knew I had known of 1150. So, and I had some inside knowledge too of I had been in the indie tech community for a long time. And so I knew who Scott Jones was as well. And I knew that he backed the school. So that was kind of an influencing, that influenced my decision a little bit as well.
Okay.
Yeah. So similar, so prior to COVID and everything like that, I had actually moved back. I'm born and raised in Indianapolis, but I had moved back after living in Atlanta for 13 years. So that's where a lot of my journalistic operations were headquartered, and the businesses that I worked at, and, even doing journalism on the corporate side, that's where all of those kind of things centered around. And then I had came back at the end of 2019, the end of 2018, beginning of 2019, and I was going back and forth between Atlanta and Indianapolis, still doing freelance work and stuff like that. But then COVID hit, and I'm an asthmatic, so that kind of, sat me down because Indianapolis was far better about that than, the alternative. So while being here, it was kind of okay, well, now you're kind of in the down period, you're not really moving around as much as you were. What can you do that how else can you better yourself? You have to find something to occupy your time. And like I said, I was already looking at coding, looking at transitioning, my career into other things, trying to find something that maybe even offered, more security off rip, as opposed to kind of journalism jobs. They kind of fly by night, you work with different companies, you're doing different things, but unless you're a part of an agency or work for an actual bureau of some sort, you're kind of on your own all the time. So I just really wanted to figure out something for me that would still allow me to be creative, but also kind of keep me cutting edge. And what better than technology, So CARES Act money also came around, and my mother, who is the director of financial aid and has worked in financial aid, was talking to me about CARES Act money. And she was like, Indianapolis does have money that they're offering people to go back to school for free. So it was why not take advantage of the address and take advantage of the time that I'm here, and benefit from that. But I just knew that coding would not be something that they would offer, right? Like any other type of skill, any type of whatever, I was not expecting to see schools that dealt with exactly what I was looking for, which is computer programming. Computer security, sure, something else maybe, help desk technician, whatever the case may be, but coding, absolutely not. So when I saw 1150 on there and then did my research, I was very pleasantly surprised because it was almost like I had struck gold twice, obviously with Zero to Mastery offering their course for free the first time in, 2020. And then in 2021, it's like you basically in this opportunity to go to school again for free this time in a way that's more suitable for you, so it's like, I felt like that was, serendipitous, and I could not let that opportunity go by twice. So it was incumbent upon me to take that, and kind of, like I said, use the opportunity to get the person to person, peer-to-peer experience with it, as opposed to, just the Discord video format.
Okay. All right. I think, all right. So it sounds like it provided some flexibility and some advantages being locally. And it sounds like everyone kind of did their research, and Sally, I get, just going off of a good experience of meeting one of the software engineers that came out of it. All right. So it gives me a little bit more of an accurate picture of why you chose the program. So let's just dive into it. What do you think of the program? What was your experience like?
Honestly, I had a pretty good experience with 1150. Kind of like what I went over earlier. I was a self-taught developer, so prior to entering the program, I had already some coding skills. I knew, basic HTML, CSS, JavaScript. So 1150 kind of really helped me put all those things together. I've worked with APIs as well before, but 1150 just kind of solidified all the fundamentals. I'm trying to think of, I want to say, a negative experience with 1150, but knowing all the skills prior to attending the program really made it a lot easier for me to get through it. Of course, so basically 1150 is divided into 3 sections or mini sections. You have the gold badge, the blue badge, and the red badge. So the gold badge, and I would say halfway through the blue badge wasn't very tough for me because a lot of it was just going over what I already knew. And then the second half of blue badge, that's when things really kind of, whoa, I don't know how to put this together. And, the instructors, the TAs, they're pretty good at kind of helping you put those things together. Of course, as the program went on, it was a lot less hand-holding. And there's not, I can't really recall a single negative experience I've had through the program, just because it really helped me solidify a lot of the skills that I already had. And of course, it's taught me also a lot of things that I didn't know. I really didn't know React prior to attending the program. So learning that through the program was really big. I know prior to attending 1150, I was trying to apply for jobs within, the Indianapolis area. And a lot of it was React. And I was like, oh man, I need to learn React. And kind of 1150 did a pretty good job of kind of helping me learn that specific skill per se.
Okay.
Yeah, my experience was a little different because, it's been a year. So I was in the program a year ago. And so that was kind of like at the height of the pandemic. And you could tell that there were some growing pains as they were kind of transitioning to like an on-campus program to, really being able to accommodate a virtual student body. So I did feel some of the growing pains and just kind of the organization. You could kind of tell like they were still trying to figure out how all of this was going to work and flow. I had not had any prior coding experience minus some HTML experience, like, like customizing MySpace profiles a long time ago. Yeah, that was like the only experience that I had with HTML. So I found the program is intense, and you are in class from 9 to 5. And, there were many late nights. And there were times where I felt like I had fallen behind, and they did provide resources for, help outside of class, but even still, sometimes you were working with developers who themselves had just graduated from the program. And so, sometimes it felt like I was troubleshooting with someone who was kind of like on the same level as me at times, and I couldn't really get the explanation or the clarity that I needed. I will say though that, I do know that is part of being a developer as a whole. Right? Like there are going to be projects, even when you get a full-time job and you're working on a project, you're not always going to have somebody to hold your hand through it, and you're going to be stuck. And so I know that there was a purpose for it being a little bit of a struggle, but there was some real frustration that I experienced. It is a tough program.
Do you feel like the screening process, that it could have been more strict to make sure you were more prepared?
That's a great question. I don't think that it's necessarily that I wasn't prepared. Well, I think maybe the expectation could have been set a little more, or maybe, I'm not sure how you would do that though, honestly, because I never would have wanted someone to tell me, no, we don't think you can do this, right? Like that would have taken away a big opportunity for me. Yeah, but I do think it's important to set that expectation that like this is a 9 to 5, which they do a good job of, but like it's very intense. It's very intense.
So, and that's the thing. People have this misconception, and it's very common that, well, if you have a harder screening process, it makes the program less accessible. And that's just not true, because what ends up happening is the program will let anyone in, and a lot of people will start falling behind. And two things happen. Either the program has to slow down to catch those people up, or those people are just left behind. They roll back into previous cohorts. They get refunds or stuff like that. And very commonly, from what I'm seeing a lot, they're just getting refunds. They're just getting rolled back into old cohorts. The program isn't really slowing down for them. And so what you can do is just say, yes, you can do it, but coding is tough. You're just going to have to spend a few weeks, a month. Like, here's some material, right? Before you apply, here's some material. Go over, like, really get a solid grasp of the fundamentals. If we want you to learn HTML and CSS and maybe a little JavaScript, we're going to have you learn that. And it's just preparing them. It's providing those materials, which a lot of coding boot camps do. And so that's really the solution, because that also, first of all, just because you get in a program doesn't make it accessible. It's not accessible when you dump a bunch of money and then like you're just struggling through it the entire way and you don't really get that experience out of it. Accessibility is providing all the resources students need to be able to succeed. And sometimes it does mean like saying the hard thing of like, we want you in here. You're just going to have to spend a little bit more time, preparing for this program. We want you to be successful. That's how I see like a solid accessibility plan into these kind of programs.
So if I can piggyback off of what you and Sally just said a little bit, because I think that, and I would say superficially, but not with like a negative connotation at all, but I think superficially that is what's offered on the outset. I mean, you are sent pre-work. The pre-work does take about 2.5 weeks to do, depending on your, particular time allowances. And again, your skill level coming in. I think where the disconnect is in this particular scenario, and I'll get into my experience in just a moment, but is that the pre-work still cannot convey, unless you're actually given technical assessments, that would be great, because especially right now where we're at in the job market in tech, tech assessments are all the wave. There are going to be a lot of technical questions, rounds of technical interviews and stuff like that. So just from a tech standpoint, can you explain to me the logic? Can you show me, different solutions and thought plans on how you would approach this code? Can you tell me how you would start to write code out? That would be the appropriate litmus for is a person even mentally prepared for this type of work? I think the issue is that the pre-work that I was given, I know my class was given, was more so like kind of basic walk-alongs, follow through, which again, because we're all of the MySpace generation, especially if we're millennials and incapacity, we've kind of been coding, you know, not as much as what the new kids are for sure, but, you know, we are that first group to have really come into contact with that. So it's this is not conversational coding and this is not casual coding, you know, and I think that the pre-work kind of presents it as, oh, just follow along with this HTML, you know, tutorial real quick, or build a CSS monster real quick. And it's like, these are not the things that you would even put on your portfolio, let alone really use to gauge whether or not somebody has, again, just the malleability of mind that it takes to really be able to sit here and learn, again, these frameworks and these languages. So I think that, to Sally's point, like coming into where we're coming into, like we're still in the pandemic. And so there's still that adjustment and that double dutch of, are we going back? Are we not? Are we going back? And I think that where the program is currently at is that, you know, they have been given a lot of CARES Act money. There is a big push to get a lot of students in. And so now it's growth, right? And I think that before, probably where Sally was experiencing like the growing pains of transition, I kind of got like the growing pains of growth and exponential growth at that, because, you know, there are multiple classes going on now at one time, where I think before, you know, historically with this, there's only been at most 2 or 3, you know, you're talking about 40 people total graduating to what's probably now 60, 70, and, you know, 80 people if you talk about the different numbers that are going on at the same time. And then they're still creating classes and still intaking, you know? So then I think even just in all fairness, anybody, you know, dealing with that level when it goes from 12 to 24 to 40 in a period of 6 weeks, 8 weeks, you know, that's a lot for any group of people to try to kind of accommodate. So in my class, we started off at 32 people. We are currently at 16. So to your point, Don, a lot of people, you know, kind of dropped off, kind of, you know, and I don't want to say couldn't cut it, because it's not really a personal flaw at all. It's just, again, without somebody really setting the expectation of this is what this is and this is what this will mean for you, because there are different learning styles. People have educational traumas. You know, a lot of people are coming from different jobs and they're just now getting back into the job market. You know, it's all types of things that are going on. So, and the CARES Act program is one that its whole premise is to get the Indiana workforce working, right? So these are not necessarily technically apt people all the time that are seeing these programs and like, oh, let me sign up because I'm coming from one space trying to move into another. Some people are seeing this as the way it's being marketed, which is like a new skill, like welding or like, you know, something like that, where it's kind of like a new trade, basically, is the way that a lot of people are kind of promoting code, you know, and it's like, it probably will one day get there, especially as, again, the younger generations become more fluent with technology and stuff like that. But I think that for the working class people and the working age people right now, that's still a big jump, you know, mentally and motivationally. There's a huge learning curve that I think has to be appreciated and has to be accounted for, because it is almost misleading in a sense to kind of advertise it as something that any and everybody can do, you know? So, you know, I think that there's that. I think that for me, there is, you know, so again, I'm a big language person and language sets expectations and stuff like that. So I think there's this idea that when you say that a course is a foundational course, I think foundation is different than introductory, you know? So if you are someone like Chris, where, for example, we had, you know, 3 really strong coders in our class. One had been a software development teacher for 10 years. Another had already worked in technology. Another had already, you know, dealt with this. They have the wherewithal to come in and start, you know, working with the set of tools given to them and saying, okay, I know what to do from this. But there's a lot in coding that can't be implied. And it's not like one of those things where it's like, oh, well, because contextually I told you this, you should just understand or know this, you know? It's like some people are going to need to literally be walked, you know, with the hand held the entire time through each. And if, you know, if a program is not set up to be patient with that or to account for the diversity in knowledge, right? Like, some people are coming in already doing this for themselves. That's a different knowledge gap than somebody that's, again, looking at this for the first time saying, I'm interested in doing this. What would it take? You know? Yes. And right now, I don't think that there's an adequate bridge between the two. So in a course, it's like you end up kind of leaning heavily on both students and teachers, the students that already know how to do this. and it's like, well, that's not really fair either for them as students themselves, or for students who did not come here to get taught by other students in a way. I'm looking for that teacher peer experience, So I think when you say foundational, learning something in 5.5 times the speed that a computer science major would learn it, or maybe a person that had been self-taught would learn it organically, and then feel comfortable applying to the jobs. I think it's kind of misleading in terms of when you're done with it. It's not like you're just necessarily job ready to start being a front end developer today. There's still going to be more time and I think that that's something that a person that isn't a coding hobbyist would not understand inherently, right? That just because you got the certification doesn't mean like you're done now, like you're good to go in the job field. No, now you need to take more time to refine, reinforce, relearn, learn more. And then perhaps maybe the job that you're going to has a certain set of frameworks or a stack that you're more comfortable with, right? But this is not like a one size fits all equation. It's not, foundational in the way that you'll be able to just do it tomorrow after you got the certification. Like, it's very introductory in the sense that if you've never done it before, you will be introduced to a world of things that will help you get farther should you continue with the independent study and continue to be dedicated to it, like on a side project, type basis. And as also you're going to have some enthusiasm about it too, because if it burns you out in the course with the speed that it's presented to you and kind of that, not hand-holding mentality towards the end of it, that could also leave a negative taste, in some people's mouth and like, oh, well, I don't know if this is something for me. But it's like, no, you'll have to develop a passion for it to really want to do it, because it's not something that you can just pick up and just be fluent at,
Yeah, so I kind of agree with what kind of both of y'all are saying. I do agree that the bar could have been set a little bit higher, especially for students who have never seen this before. Coming from my experience, if I didn't know any type of coding coming in, I probably would have been lost. Because there's a lot of my prior experience with coding and teaching myself how to code. I mean, it's like literally I've been teaching myself how to code a year prior to attending 1150 Academy. Now, it wasn't a whole year straight. It's been kind of like on and off, picking it back up. But that experience alone, that was a whole year of me failing and teaching myself and trying to figure out why would I use the return keyword in a function, but why is it not just telling me I already have it right here? Why do I have to return it? I think that's just one example. I think the bar could have been set a little bit higher in terms of the material sent to students beforehand. I think that would help a whole lot of students who's never seen any type of coding material before. And yeah, I think that would help a whole lot in terms of new students coming in.
For sure.
That's a really good point. So when you do have CARES is state funding from Indiana specifically, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Do you know if they negotiate that contract and lower the price of what the coding bootcamp actually makes per student? But I wouldn't expect you guys to know because so there's a thing, if it was a negotiation and the program did kind of accept students for a lower amount, sure, it sounds like they do have some growing pains that they have to fix, but it can almost be a little bit honorable that they are just trying to get more people into tech and they're willing to negotiate down a little bit and make it more accessible. But if they're getting that full, and I think they charge like $13,500. If they're getting that full amount, that's a lot of money. You have to understand your audience. And with Indiana, I mean, I'm Northwest Indiana, and there are a lot of people that aren't very tech savvy. And I can imagine a lot of people, even just some old friends that I knew, trying to get into and become a software engineer. It's not like this random extra, like it's not like welding. It's not like a trade that you could just quickly pick up. It takes so much time. And, like usually with like different certifications with different jobs, when you get to the end, you're qualified. Whereas you can do that with the coding bootcamp if it's designed to like really give you time for things to solidify. You 100% can be prepared for a coding bootcamp, but it sounds like 1150, they probably already know it, but they have to really understand their audience, and they have to, maybe it's not extending the program where they have to pay more instructors or hire more people, because I don't really know the business side of things, but maybe it is increasing that prep time or the requirements to finally getting into the program. Maybe it is, I'm telling you, when you really get those like a solid foundation down before you go into a program, it's like night and day when you compare coding boot camps that don't care about that and do care about that. And sometimes that even means like creating pre-work that takes 2 months. And it sounds like a long time, but there are programs that do it very successfully and that are also really intense and also like really, require a lot out of you. And so it's either kind of changing the way that they're teaching these things to accommodate these varying skill levels, which is really, like if you have varying skill levels, it's really hard to keep that quality up. It's really hard to keep it up, but there are solutions to it. And so I don't know what solutions they're aiming for. My suggestion is pre-work. I think that's going to be one of the cheaper alternatives to preparing students a little bit more. But all three of you were in the guts of this, like how they teach. Do you have any feedback as far as like?
Well, yeah, for sure. I mean, I think that, one of the things is that this idea of being full stack, right? I mean, and you hear it everywhere, especially once you start to get into tech. Oh, full stack, full stack, full stack, or what's your stack, or what technologies are you using? And it's like, when we are speaking about the fundamentals, realistically, even a person maybe that's not as computer savvy, really truly can, if they really are focused, and I feel like they can pick up HTML, within 6 to 8 weeks and really start to be like, oh, okay, I understand this. I'm doing websites. I'm seeing something, you throw CSS in there. Oh, okay. Now I feel like, oh, okay, maybe I can make, maybe I can do a little something. Maybe I can sell these or, whatever. But when you start talking about JavaScript, that's not anybody. I mean, and we're all laughing because we all do this. That's nothing to play with, as they say. That's not something that you sit down in 3 weeks, and then you're given really a week and a half, 2 weeks in the course because of the way that it's timed to get the fundamentals of JavaScript and build from that into now you're doing objects and now you're building with React and now you're building on TypeScript. It's like, I think an ideal format for a boot camp would be, okay, HTML 6-week course, almost like electives, right? Where you maybe build your own course contingent on what your goals are, but maybe HTML is a 6-week course, maybe CSS is a 4 to 6 week course, maybe JavaScript is a 12-week course in itself, and maybe at the end of each of these courses, you're building projects that you then see kind of like, they Voltron together, and then you can start to build on each one as you go, because this idea that, oh, I spent a week and a half or I spent 18 days on a concept, and this is not even just in 1150. I mean, you'll find this even in the school system, in math class, for example, where they'll try to teach a bunch of concepts at once as opposed to just going through each concept and giving it its time, but I think that's where people get left behind because it is a lot to throw at a lot of people, especially in the age of, as much has happened in the last 2 years, you got to think people are coming from all different types of emotional spaces. And again, they have different motivations. For some people are looking for quicker fixes than others, And so again, I just think that this idea that you can be full stack at the end of 3 months is inherently just not true, because either you're going to have come with some information already and had that built on, which, okay, so now you had your knowledge gaps exposed, or you're going to come with that being the information that you first got, and now you'll be sent off to go close off the knowledge gaps yourself, So either way, you're kind of getting back to the self-learning aspect. And I think that, again, if you have passion for developing, you realize that being a lifelong learner and doing this on your own time, in your free time, is going to be, that's what you're committed to for life, But that takes explaining to again, somebody that's looking to, change their life at the end of 12 weeks.
Yeah. And I kind of piggyback on that as well to what you're saying, Keisha. I think the why is really, really important when someone is trying to learn coding. For me, who has worked in several fields, I've always dabbled with HTML, CSS, high school, even before graduating college. And, it's just something I had fun doing.
Yeah.
I've worked, kind of like I mentioned earlier, I've worked in 3-4 different industries, and that learning phase was always fun for me, learning a new skill set. And then after 3-4 months or however long it took me to learn those skill set, everything just became stagnant. Mm-hmm. And then here it comes again. Okay, this is getting boring. This is not what I expected. So I go back to coding again. And then, I found a new job, found a new career that I thought I was going to like, for example, AT&T. I thought I was going to like AT&T because it was technology. I had to deal with technology. But then again, after a couple of months, it got stagnant. So it's like there was this phase wherein I just kept coming back to coding. And so at the end of the day, I had to take a step back and evaluate, like, okay, I keep coming back to this one thing. Why not go put all hands on deck and actually learn this, that and make this a career, because this is something that I was passionate about. This is something that I enjoyed doing even in my free time. Like, this is something, I'm a big video game guy, but if you tell me if I'm going to play some video games or if I'm going to code, I'd be coding, because that is fun for me. So I think the why is a really big factor when someone is going into a boot camp, right? Because a lot of my classmates, a lot of them are just really they heard about the CARES Act. They got introduced to it. Hey, it's a new skill that they thought they could learn, but they didn't really know what coding entails, right? And all the stuff that comes along with it, how difficult it is to learn a few concepts. I've known JavaScript for quite some time now, and I'm still learning new things every week. It's a lifelong learning. And I think that's what I love about it. And so when I was going through the program, I knew a little bit more about JavaScript and fundamentals than my fellow classmates. But at the same time, I felt like I was spending a lot more time outside of class. Every single waking moment when I was not working my 9 to 5, I was coding my computer, trying to figure out something that I've been trying to figure out for the past day or so. And this is with me with prior knowledge about coding. So I think when someone has a really strong why, as in they've ventured into other career choices and it's not really clicking for them, it becomes stagnant. For myself, for example, coding was my why, that something I was passionate about, something I had absolutely fun doing, even though there were times that I just, just want to shut my laptop off and just, because I figured I didn't put an S on my API and stuff wasn't working, right? It was just one letter or it was a backtick that was missing. And, at the end of the day, whenever I figured out those problems, that's what gets me going to the next code, to the next line of code. So my why, I think the why is a pretty strong thing when someone's really coming to learn coding, because I think that alone will kind of set you apart is this something you're really going to put all your time to, or is this something you just kind of test in the waters and whatnot?
Okay. And Sally, I know you've been pretty patient. Did you want to add anything else to what we're talking about?
No. Well, I do. I know that we've had a lot of constructive criticism for the Academy, but I will say that my experience overall was really good. It was a very good experience. And I will say that I credit 1150 for having incredibly caring and supportive staff. There wasn't there was never a time when I like could not get the support that I needed, or that an email went unanswered, or that a professor wasn't answering my question. So I do just want to make sure that, you know, in the midst of all of the constructive criticism, that, you know, there was some really positive experiences that I had at 1150.
Yes,
Yeah, and I think
I do agree on that as well.
Yeah.
There's the staff, TAs, all of them are awesome. All the instructors, I love them. I love them to that. I still talk to some of them to this day. They're really supportive, and I think a lot of the stuff I learned, especially during Blue Badge and Red Badge, would have been really difficult learning on my own. So they just kind of laid out the foundations. Now, they were not as handholdy in Blue Badge and Red Badge for us. It was more so, hey, you need to figure this out on your own. But whenever we had some issues and needed some help, you know, the instructors and the TAs were definitely very helpful. And I think yes, there's a lot of constructive criticism going on, but like Sally said, it's overall a great experience, and it just really helped me put everything together.
Yeah, for sure. And I would say that
real quick though, and we'll get to you, Keisha, but I want to emphasize, like, my brand is being critical, right? Constructive criticism isn't necessarily a negative thing, and my audience knows that. I am always critical of these programs. So to me, when I hear this constructive criticism, it's not like, oh my God, you're doing a horrible job, 1150, right? It's just like, you mentioned, if they do have growing pains, if they don't get this feedback, like, they're never going to improve. They have kind of a tough situation bringing in so many students. And this constructive criticism is incredibly important, because I've seen a lot of coding boot camps scale poorly. The scaling problem has not been solved perfectly. And eventually, like a lot of coding boot camps that do try to scale, even if it is just taking students that are getting supplemental income, scaling is scaling, and it has not been solved in the industry. And many programs will disappear. They'll be sold to colleges. They'll kind of run out of business. They'll go into debt and stuff like that. So this constructive criticism, I want to emphasize, it's not saying they're bad. It's just saying, like, you guys obviously care about it. You care about the instructors. You had good experiences. So, you know, like, really take this feedback seriously, 1150, because you want to see them succeed and help more students, right?
Exactly.
And that's really all I was going to say, is that I don't think that, you know, in the midst of the critiques, that it's, you know, that the energy is that 1150 is malicious, or that they are, you know, filled with malintent, because it's not them. You know, I just think that there's small, just institutional things that, as we've mentioned, like you said, it's scaling, it's growing pains. It's, you know, these are the conversations just from the people in the center of it, the end users. You know what I mean? This is just what it is, you know. But to the point about the TAs and the LAs and the instructors and everything, really great people. I mean, I know Sally mentioned that you know, a lot of times, which is still the case as of this year, that you are dealing with people who have not had their first formal job yet. You know what I mean? So in a lot of ways, you are dealing with people who are just, you know, they're seniors to your underclassmen, you know, but that's cool though, because still that kind of gives that. One of the things that was most moving to me from the beginning of our class, in particular in Gold Badge, was how much of a community we were as opposed to a class. You know, we really, you know, are interested in and invested in helping one another, seeing one another succeed, you know, doing what it takes after hours, in between hours. So the culture at 1150 is really just one that is helpful, you know, in general. I just, you know, like we're all saying, there are just certainly, you know, things with, because they're also not that old, you know what I mean? I don't even think they're 5 years old yet. So with that being the case, you know, I mean, these are baby steps, you know, and they are growing fast. And so, yeah, like you said, I just think they're just valid points to be made. But it's, I would want to be clear that they are not like, you know, it's not like they're, like I said, filled with malintent or, you know, maliciously underserving or anything like that.
Yeah. And so, it's, you know, it's clear that everyone does care about a lot of the instructors and staff that you interacted with. I think that can make or break an experience, and that's important to recognize. But yeah, as far as the scaling, what's probably going to happen is, I don't know, reviews are a really interesting thing, and how just coding boot camps are able to get reviews in general, and what encourages students to make positive and negative reviews. Like, I feel like I've had like long live streams talking about this, but the quality when you scale like this, I do potentially see the quality dropping if they're going to promote a variety of skill levels. I guess I want to ask this. Do you feel like your graduation rates at your program, as well as just the success of the students, would increase if they included more pre-work for JavaScript specifically?
I would say yes. So coming into the program and having zero experience with JavaScript, I may have taken a step back and thought more about continuing on with the program if I had sat down with JavaScript. And another thing that I also think is really important for anybody who's going into a boot camp, and an expectation that I kind of wish had been set with me at the beginning, is it is a passion, and it is something that you have to want to do after hours. And it's something that you have to be genuinely interested in to be successful at. Like, to work in that field, to work in this field, to work in development, you really have to have the drive to do it all the time. And so I think had I understood that and had that expectation been set, I don't know that I would not have done the program, but I wouldn't have had maybe the expectation or thought that, hey, once I graduate from here, I can be a developer. Because I don't think that that's realistic for someone like me who didn't have any experience with JavaScript.
And I think that that's so important. Like, I mean, truly, like, I really don't think that can be emphasized enough, because it's important that people understand that, again, and this is not to discount skills like welding, because that too takes time. That too takes an amount of passion. You know what I mean? That too takes practice in a studio when no one else is there and a desire to go in there and do those things, you know? But already, you know, to sit at the computer and to sit at the computer for hours on end is already, you have to have a certain aptitude for that, you know? So just speaking from a basic personality point, it's really important that people are able to adequately and accurately gauge who they are and what their relationship is, not only with technology, but things like computer screens, things like code, you know, because this is the nature of the job. These will be the nature of the jobs, you know, and if you struggle with that aspect of it, then I would struggle to see a comfortable trajectory. Now, obviously, there are, again, a million and one things you can do in tech that are not coding, but I think also maybe more conversations, which we do have workshops, but I think more conversations would also be helpful, you know, about other things that you can do in tech, in case a person does feel like, oh, this isn't for me, you know. It's important to people that they know that they still have access, they can still be a part of it, and that there is a place for them, you know, but maybe being a developer just isn't it. And again, there's no like real personal accountability there. I know for me, to the thing about interest, it's also about mindset, right? Because I work 2 jobs doing this full time, and I would have liked to have had more time, you know, and it's not that I didn't know that 9 to 5 would be consuming, because it was. And it's not that I didn't personally expect to have to work after hours on it, because I did. But I think that, you know, just on an adult level, in terms of like budgeting and planning out what those 12 weeks of my life would have looked like, since, you know, I think I would have taken more time. You know, I know that often when we did our group projects, I think that I was the only person in my project that was still actively working, you know what I mean? So there are things like that you kind of got to consider when it's time for team building activities and stuff like that. And it's just, again, there's no way to know these things. You don't know what you don't know. You know what I mean? And there's no way to know these things unless somebody's kind of like actually counseling you and giving you that information. Like, this is truly what needs to be expected. Because it's one thing to say, oh, it'll be a lot, it's intense, there's a lot of information. But it's another way to, again, just think about how you relate to information, what your personal environment is to be able to receive best and learn best. And I definitely would not recommend working full time or working really if you're going to do a program like this, because you need the time to really focus on what you're focusing on, you know? So I, from personal experience, that's just what I would say to anybody that has a job and is looking to do a full, and they offer part-time. So it's not like they're not, you know, conscientious of that at all. But just from a student's perspective, if you know that you have to go to work still, or that you don't necessarily have the capability to kind of like just take that break and focus on something for 3 months, I would really, you know, figure out maybe other ways that you could get the things that are most important to you, or, discover what your interests are, before kind of like putting that hard brake on your life,
Okay. That's a fair assessment. So, it feels like we've established kind of who this program is for and who it isn't for. And more importantly, you very clearly elaborated on what your struggles were based on your current life circumstances. And it feels like there was a mismatch of expectations. And so, that is feedback for the program of really laying out those expectations, whether they choose to like add more pre-work or extend the program or whatever, that's up to them. But it sounds like a lot of people, and it's not to discredit things like welding and stuff like that, but a lot of those different professions that you get into, it's different than software engineering. It's not better, it's not worse, but it's different. And it feels like it's more of an, complete these steps and you'll get this job, where software engineering, it doesn't feel that linear. It's very complicated and it's frustrating to like really try to solidify that. So I think all of you did a really good job of establishing those expectations for aspiring developers considering this program. But it also sounds like, overall, it feels like all of you are pretty confident that there's going to be supplemental work once you graduate to really stand out and be competitive. So, speaking of their career services, what kind of support do they provide to help you once you graduate? Is it teaching you how to job search? Is it providing mentorship where you can call in and ask? What do they provide to help with that next step?
So I guess I can go first since I'm pretty fresh on this. So basically, once you graduate, you get assigned basically a career counselor, right? You also get a set of modules to kind of complete. It'll basically help you polish out your resume, polish out your LinkedIn, and basically all the other things like your website portfolio and how to interview and whatnot. And you kind of have to go through those modules as you're meeting with your counselor. Now, as of right now, I have a new counselor, so I just found this out yesterday, so I haven't met with her just yet. But typically, I'm just in the very beginning stage. So basically, first you meet with your guidance counselor, and you kind of go over what is your goal, basically, is they're asking, right? So most people who graduate the boot camp is they're trying to find a web development job. That's web development boot camp. But it's just trying to see what exactly you're looking for. Now, they did mention, hey, don't kind of depend on them to do all these searches for you. It's more so you can lean on them, but don't depend on them. So basically, you still have to do all the applications yourself. Now, they do send out a list of companies they're partnered within the greater Indianapolis area. So that's really helpful, seeing what companies are familiar with 1150, where their graduates have been. So if a job posting or a position opened up within that company, they can send out a referral. It just makes it a little bit the process easier in terms of applications. But yeah, so basically you get your modules, you meet with your guidance counselor, and then you basically have the connections within the greater Indianapolis area. I haven't gone that far into the career services yet since I'm actually just finishing up the modules. But yeah, that's basically it.
Okay. Sound pretty similar?
Same experience. Yes. Same experience for me. They help you with your resume. And I will say one of the, I don't know much about any of the other development boot camps, but I will say that the connections that 1150 has made with other companies in the Indianapolis area is very advantageous for their students.
Yes. That list they sent me was very, very long.
Okay. It feels like they're really tied into the local community, and it feels like they care about the local community. And sometimes when you get programs that are in larger cities, not so much, right? And sometimes they just give a lot of empty promises based on, like so many times coding boot camps have offered like career days, hiring days, and you find out like half the companies just want, the people who went through the program, then became a TA and went through the program basically again, or, half of them were trying to hire for equity and like you weren't even making a salary. You were just like getting a percentage of some company that probably wasn't going to be successful. Right. So I see that in a lot of bigger cities, but it feels like this program does care about the local community, which is interesting. Okay. I feel like I have a solid grasp on the program. Everything's laid out. I think we're just kind of getting to the point where we're about out of time. But before we do wrap it up, what's one final piece of advice you would give for people in general, not necessarily even going to a coding bootcamp, just aspiring developers in general? Maybe even a piece of advice you wish you had heard when you first started.
I guess I'll go first since I said the biggest piece of advice is, if anything, if you're thinking about learning how to code, is do your research. There's going to be a lot of content out there in terms of software development, software engineering, whatever the case may be. Do your research and find out what field you actually want to be into. Because depending on that field, whether it's data science, web development, whether it's front end or back end, it's going to be different technologies you're going to need to learn. So now, for example, Python's, yes, you can use that in web development, but that's something more so with data science, right? That's more so broadly used in data science than web development. And I didn't know that. So I've learned more than few technologies around, that didn't make sense learning this. So I'm going to go learn something else. I'm going to learn something else. So find out what field you want to be into before you actually put time. I think that's the biggest advice, because I've wasted a lot of time learning new things every couple of weeks just to find out that that's not even being used in the field I want to be in. So,
okay.
So I would say this is coming from someone who is working in an industry where I'm not a web developer necessarily, but I work with a development team. So I work cross-functionally with web developers. And I will say that one skill set, so I work in marketing, and one skill set that I would love to see more of in the development community that works on websites specifically, like big enterprise websites, is to just have some knowledge of SEO and to have a little bit of knowledge of like UX UI. I think that I think that having those two skill sets specifically will increase your chances of finding an opportunity in a full-time job, like exponentially. Yeah.
I want to add to that. I think that's why I got my first job. Yeah. And I've talked about my story before, so I'm not going to go into it. But basically, I was doing portfolio reviews. I did like 500 portfolio and project reviews of aspiring developers, and I focused on tons of UX stuff. And I loved it. I did it because I actually enjoyed thinking about the psychology of the user. But also, the SEO part was something I was weaker in, but I was also very curious about. And I mentioned that in my interview as well. And I can tell you, my position was front-end focused. I was really, like, the UX team did enjoy me in the conversation. At least that's what my boss said. Maybe they said stuff behind their back, but they enjoyed me in the conversation because I had a lot of very thorough conversations and I cared about what they were saying, and I talked about it, and I was able to understand them, and kind of very clearly, because I understood them, I could give them realistic limits of what we could do and what we couldn't. And also with SEO, like, I learned tons of SEO stuff. We were very SEO driven. That's where we got a lot of our traffic, and that really brought a lot of revenue towards the business. So for front end positions, I don't talk about that a lot, but I'm glad you said it. That's really good advice. Cool. How about you, Keisha?
I think that I would just say, just stay informed and just keep your ears open, definitely listen to what your teachers and your instructors in whatever boot camp you have to say, but also, stay open to your own research. Continue to try to cultivate an environment where if this is something that you want to be a part of, that you do find ways to let it, be a part of your life and take over those necessary parts of your life. Read the blogs, stay a part of the, the group chats and the forums and the discords, assert yourself in the community, network laterally, communicate with your fellow students, try to communicate with your teachers, because those are the connections that you'll lean on and that you will benefit from as you continue to grow through this as a career. And then if you are going to do the development part, then I would say, learn to enjoy being wrong and learn to appreciate it as a means to getting to the right answer, because you'll be wrong more than you'll be right. And if you can't, and that's like something that's hard for you to deal with.
Yeah.
This might not be, the best field.
I agree.
But if you can appreciate being wrong, then yeah, you'll be able to go really far, I think.
That's a hard thing to get over. You get a lot of feedback as a software engineer, and even not just from people in general, just constantly seeing your failures until you finally get that one success and the code lights up and it works.
And it might only be one success.
That's true. That is true. All right. I think that's a good spot to end. Let's go ahead and jump into the outros. Chris, if people wanted to reach out to you, where could they reach you? And feel free to shout out, like if you have a website, blog, something like that.
Yeah, so I believe the best way, if people want to reach out to me, I would say LinkedIn, but I just finished my portfolio site. So if people want to reach out to me, you can reach me at cblakedev.com. So that's just C as in Charlie, B as in boy, LAKEDEV.com, cblakedev.com. All my socials will be on there. And yeah, feel free to reach out to me. I'm always open to network and connect.
Cool. Thanks, Chris. How about you, Sally?
Yeah, best place to connect with me is going to be on LinkedIn. Very responsive to messages on LinkedIn and connections.
Okay, awesome. How about you, Keisha?
Sure. You can find me on LinkedIn or contact me through my portfolio at keisham.tech. So that's KEISHAM. .tech is my personal website, and then also I just launched my blog, Root Directory blog, so rootdir.blog. It's tech talk for everyone. Again, just trying to simplify a lot of tech concepts and talk about things so that people can get a better handle on if they want to kind of peer into our world or understand what your tech friends are talking about. Hopefully you'll find resources on my blog that'll help you be a part of the conversation.
I love it. Well, I really appreciate everyone coming on. And if you have any opinions, even if you disliked, they took the dislike button on YouTube away, but if you dislike the video and you have criticism, provide it in the comments below. If you liked it, it really helps boost it in the algorithm. Comments and likes really help boost the video. It gets it out to more people. So please keep doing it. I really appreciate everyone that does, but we will do more episodes like this. And Chris, Sally, Keisha, thanks so much for coming on. Stick around just for a couple minutes. But yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for having me.